When Ronald Reagan became president, his Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, said he went in, met the president in the Oval Office and said, "What is your strategy to contain the Soviet Union?" So the Russians were expanding, taking over all of Eastern Europe. And every president always had a plan to contain them so they didn't grow, so communism didn't spread as fast as the Soviets had planned. Because the communists always played a long game. They're looking 100 years out. Well, Weinberger said Reagan replied, "Defeat them." And Weinberger said, "What?" He said, "My plan is to defeat the Soviets." And Weinberger said he was taken aback because, like, no expert, no Washington establishment guy has ever even considered the possibility that we could defeat the Soviets. Many wondered if there was a war, who would win, or would it just be mutual, total destruction, mutual assured destruction, as they used to call it. And he's like, Reagan saying, defeat them. And he says, "Well, Mr. President, how can we defeat the Soviets?" He says, what are we, 20, 30 years ahead of them on technology? And Weinberger said, more. That was a secret back then. Everyone thought we were equal. But we're about 40 years ahead of the Russians on technology. He said, well, if we're that far advanced, for every dollar we spend on a missile, they're going to have to spend 3. And Weinberger goes, yeah. He says, we're going to defeat them economically. We're going to make them collapse from within. We're going to defeat them without firing a freaking bullet. And that's what he did. He built up our military stronger than it's ever been, more nuclear missiles than ever before. The Democrats and the media, which are Democrats, partisan Democrats, all called him a crazy man. He's unhinged. We got to remove this guy. We got to figure out a way to take him down. He's going to cause a World War III. He's a buffoon. And, they didn't like Reagan to begin with, the establishment Republicans and, of course, the Democrats, because he wasn't one of them. He wasn't an Ivy League scholar. He wasn't, he went to like a state college. And although when he was younger and the head of the union, he was a staunch liberal, he's seen how liberal policies failed the poor and failed everyone they said they were there to help. So he became the most outspoken conservative of our time, the greatest conservative of our time back then. So they hated this guy. So every day was a barrage of attacks. This guy's crazy. He's going to cause World War III. And guess what? He won. He was right. He defeated the Soviets. Now our kids don't even think the Soviets are that dangerous. Growing up, if you're my age, you realize everybody was afraid of World War III. The Soviets were so powerful, and we wondered if they were more advanced than us. And he proved that we were still the greatest nation in the world. Defeats the Soviets. Well, for the past 20, 30 years, I've been hearing a man named Donald Trump talk about the Chinese the same way. We need to defeat the Chinese economically. And I've always been, check the box conservative. I've always been a conservative Republican. Pro-life, check. Pro-family, check. Pro-Second Amendment, check. Pro-First Amendment, check. Small government, check. Less taxes, check. Less regulation, check. I was conservative down the line, but there was one box I could never check, and I could never understand why my Republican representatives checked this box. And this box was trading with the Chinese when they're charging our guys that are shipping stuff over there 20% tariffs, and we're charging them 0. I never understood that. Trump understood it, and he knew the bottom line was corruption, kickbacks. All these representatives on both sides were getting kickbacks. So he went in there with a plan to defeat the Chinese economically. And he was. We were kicking their butts. Their economy was getting weaker, and our economy was the strongest it's ever been. Our unemployment was the lowest in 50 years. And in this economic boom, it affected the blue-collar guy the most. And I'm a blue-collar guy. I can tell you firsthand, I was working at Borden Dairy, delivering milk. And when Trump's tax cuts got approved and he signed them, we got a letter from the CEO of the company. Based on the tax cuts, we're able to give everybody a $2 an hour raise. My friend delivered juice for Tropicana. He delivered Tropicana and Naked Juice. He called me and he says, I'm not a Republican, but I love your guy Trump. He said they got paid commission, what they sold. So what Tropicana did was give everybody across the board a $2,000 bonus because of the tax windfall. And then what happens when you cut taxes is you get market conditions. Other companies are making more money, so they start calling you, hey, listen, we'll give you more than this guy. And everybody's wages went up. And I seen it firsthand, and then I seen the data. The news even was forced to report it, that for the first time in 30 years, blue collar income went up. And it didn't just go up 2%, it went up I think it was 20, 30% at one point. We were beating the Chinese economically. So what's happening now with these lockdowns is not germ warfare, it's economic warfare, but they're using this germ to beat us economically. And this may sound like a conspiracy theory, but just hear me out. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just looking at things common sense, and I'm here on the ground working my butt off every day, watching what's happening. Dennis Prager wrote an article, I think they published in the USA Today, and he said he's been living in California since the 70s, and he went on vacation in Florida just like last week, where I live in Florida, so I can attest what he's saying is true. And he said he was amazed how it was just normal. He said Florida was like normal. He said, I actually went to a restaurant and ate dinner, and I got up and took pictures, and one of the customers recognized me and said, oh, you taking pictures because you never seen people eating dinner? And he's like, well, I haven't seen anybody eating in a restaurant in 9 months. California, everything's closed for the past 9 months. They've been on lockdown. And then he said after that, he took his grandkids go bowling. And he said families are having fun, laughing, the bowling alley's packed, and people are living normal. He said then when I get on the plane and go back to California, he said I literally felt like I did in college. In college, he majored in communist studies, I think he said, but he was, or took a course in communism. And he said he's traveled the Soviet states at that time in the 70s when the Russians had everything locked down under communism. And he said California is so reminiscent of that. And his article is a good article if you want to look it up, Dennis Prager. Basically, he was saying how much longer could the Soviet states in America live with the free states of America? And he called Florida a free state and California obviously a Soviet state. And he said especially when you see how the elite leaders, and I just this morning, this is the day after New Year's, I seen a video of Mayor de Blasio dancing in the streets in New York City at Times Square when he ordered no one to go in Times Square. It was the first time in like 100 years, Times Square was full of people celebrating. But he was allowed to go. And this is how communism works. You look at North Korea. That little guy over there, he eats freaking caviar and steak every day while his people are starving to death, literally eating their cats and dogs and rats and mice because they get a little portion. When the government takes care of you, this is how they take care of you. They give them a little, like a pint of rice a day to eat. So if they can't find some kind of rodent or pet to kill, they're eating a pint of rice a day. So people are seeing this, and how much more can we take? But I want to tell Dennis Prager, this isn't the Soviet states. You're not living in the Soviet states of America. You're living in the Chinese states. And Neil Ferguson, the guy who developed the lockdown system in Britain, which Fauci and all these clowns followed over here in America, Neil Ferguson said that he patterned the lockdown after the shining example of China's lockdown. So these lockdowns are patterned by the communist Chinese. But he said he was unsure how it would work in a free country. He was surprised at how quickly people became obedient. Isn't that interesting? So you may say, well, the lockdowns are for our own benefit. They're protecting us. Well, first I want to quote Benjamin Franklin. Whoever gives up their liberty in order to have safety deserves neither. And we're finding out that in California they're getting neither, because they've been locked down and restricted more than any other state in America, and their cases are skyrocketing. So it's not working. And in fact, when this whole lockdown thing started, there were hundreds of scientists and doctors saying lockdowns are a bad idea. But of course, Facebook took them down and said it was fake news. And Facebook they actually have a hate speech engineering department that they use to censor. And the people that run that are Chinese nationals with PhDs from China, Chinese nationals, and they decide what is hate speech. And 100% of the time, anything that opposes the establishment or Democrats' ideology is considered hate speech, taken off, or fake news. So the vast majority of people, if you weren't searching and looking for information, if you're just one of these people that are just fed whatever the news media feeds you and you just accept it like a mind-numb robot, you didn't see these scientists and doctors. But now even the CDC is admitting, yeah, lockdowns are a bad idea. They're causing more problems. Even the WHO, not the WHO, the organization, not the band, the World Health Organization, are saying lockdowns are making things worse than better. So why are they locking us down? Well, if you listen to men and women that are involved in international affairs that have a conscience, they give us a hint. Austin, this international banker, her name is Austin. Oh, where the heck is it? Okay, Austin. I can't find her name. I thought I wrote it down. But she's an international banker. Her name is Austin something or another. I just remember the name Austin because I thought it was a guy until I seen the video, and then I realized, and I read that this international banker Austin. So I was assuming it was a guy and it was a girl. But look it up. Anyway, she has a video. She's an international banker, and she said for years the international bankers wanted to go to a more central control of the economy. Kind of like China's central control, central command. They said it's so much harder to control people, currency, when you have 100 mom and pops on Main Street. You shut them down and you just have one Walmart, one Amazon. Much easier to control, much easier. So with these lockdowns, you notice they'll shut down all the mom and pops. But Walmart, they say actually the top 1% have gained 27% in income during this pandemic. The Jeff Bezos, the Walmarts of the world, they're increasing their wealth tremendously. And the mom and pop that was, making $60,000, $70,000 a year, running a little shop downtown, they're crushed. They're totally crushed. And the reason this woman is saying the international bankers want control, because they want to give a new currency, an electronic currency, kind of like Bitcoin. They want to totally get rid of, dollars, and because then they can control it better. Because if you disagree with them, they can just shut down electronically what you buy and sell. It's all about control. And they had this plan for years. And, although I believe Sanders is a socialist, some people thought he was a populist and he, would bash the banks. So that's why they had the rigged election and gave, the Democrats, and it's proven, this is not conspiracy theory. We know they rigged the election. Donna Brazile admitted it. The Democrat National Committee chairwoman, she had to step down because of it. Bernie Sanders guys all know this. This ain't a conspiracy theory. They rigged it to give it to Hillary. But they never dreamed in a million years that a real populist like Trump would beat Hillary. So they didn't rig it. Or they did the normal fake voting in Philadelphia, where they add votes and stuff, and people are in jail for that in Philadelphia. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. People are in jail, judges in jail for stuffing ballots. So this is real news. But they never dreamed Trump would get so many votes and beat Hillary. So they made sure this time there was no way he was going to win. And they started with the Russian collusion. Eric Swalwell, a congressman from California, was on CSN, NBC every night saying, "I am on the intelligence committee. I see the intelligence. Trump has definitely colluded with Russia. And then we find out behind closed doors on their testimony, he says, no, there's no proof of collusion. But on CNN, he can say whatever he wants because they'll report fake news. Okay? Then we find out this same guy, Eric Swalwell, admits to sleeping with a Chinese communist spy by the name of Fang Fang. Not only did he sleep with Fang Fang for years, Fang Fang raised millions of dollars for his campaign to be reelected. Fang Fang brought in all her communist spies as interns. Nancy Pelosi knew all this, and she still appointed him to the Intelligence Committee, and she refuses Republicans' demand to kick him out. I was in the Navy. I just had a secret clearance, like the Navy SEALs would have like top secret, nuclear guys would have top secret. I just had basic secret clearance. If I knew, when they questioned me, do I know any Chinese communists? If I said yes, I couldn't even get that clearance. This guy's sleeping with the enemy, and he's on the Intelligence Committee. The whole time lying, saying, look at Russia, Russia, and it's the communist Chinese that are invading our country. And then you realize, another report by the National Pulse this week, that all the media executives in all the Western outlets, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, New York Times, Washington Post, have taken trips, sponsored trips by the communist Chinese over the years. And they don't deny it. They say it's to get to know them or whatever. You know, they spin it somehow. But they're taking sponsored trips, paid for trips by the communist Chinese. Dinners, beautiful dinners, wining and dining. And it's this group that the communist Chinese have set up to do this is a lobbying group. And they say they're lobbying to get positive press coverage of the communists in China. That's one way the communist gets in. Okay? Another way is through universities. Donated millions of dollars to many universities. And in return, they're asked to give positive feedback about communist Chinese. Now, some colleges, I think it was University of Texas, have rejected that. Once, people, congressmen in Texas found out, they're like, hey, you got to stop taking money from these Chinese. So that's another way they get in. They get in, indoctrinating our young children that communism isn't really that bad. Capitalism is evil, Another way they do it, of course, is through the big tech giants. We know now CNN's reporting, but before the election, they said this was fake news. Jake Tapper, I seen it myself, said this is fake news, and it's so horrible I won't even repeat it. After the election, he reported it. Obviously, Hunter Biden is admitting that he's under investigation. Actually, 5 investigations by the FBI. We know that on Hunter Biden's computer, he admits, and even on ABC, Good Morning America, Hunter Biden admitted to taking $1.5 billion from the Chinese communists for a business deal that he had no knowledge of that business. It's like hedge funds or something. And his commission was in the tens of millions, and he admitted that he had to split half of it with his dad, Joe Biden, who's going to be our president if something doesn't change here in the next few weeks. Now, getting back to Ronald Reagan, I remember after he left the presidency, he gave us a couple speeches in Japan to businesses and got paid $2 million. And the press thought this was horrible. They thought this was just so much of a conflict of interest. But they don't say a peep about the Bidens receiving billions from our enemy, our sworn enemy, the communist Chinese. Because I just told you they're in bed as well with the Chinese. The media is in bed. Not only do these Chinese Communist Party leaders take them out and wine and dine and go on trips with them, they buy a lot of advertisement, and that's how these media companies make money, through TV commercials, or if you're a newspaper, through print ads. So it's another way the Chinese communists got their fangs, literally Fang, the girl that slept with, got their fangs in the media. So we got the most compromised man. Somehow they're trying to tell us, speaking of Reagan, when Reagan won 49 states, I remember that year. Reagan won 49 states. His Democratic opponent, Mondale, only won his state, Minnesota, 49-1. And they're trying to tell us that popular president got 50 million less votes than Joe Biden, who never campaigned, never went anywhere. And when he did speak, he would always misspeak. When he would go out occasionally, he would get a crowd of about 10 people. He was the most unpopular presidential candidate ever. And they're saying he got 50 million more votes than Reagan. And you'll say, oh, well, the population in America was much smaller. Okay. Although I was opposed to Obama's socialism, and I was appalled by what he wanted, and admitted he wanted European socialism in America, and he wasn't shy about it. And now they just rammed Chinese communism on us, and nobody's saying a freaking word, you know. But we were all appalled at his European socialism. But he was very charismatic, and a lot of people, unfortunately, just vote on people's personality and likability. And I'll have to admit, he was a very likable guy, very charismatic guy. And so I wasn't surprised when he crushed John McCain. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised when he beat Romney. But you can't get me to believe that Joe Biden got 15 million more votes than Obama. Got more black votes than Obama, when they're telling us Trump got the most black votes of any Republican. The math just does not add up. And in my next video, will Trump cross the Rubicon? I'm going to go into more detail about that. And I'm going to try and give you some hope. But right now, I want to say we need to resist. We need patriots to stand up for liberty and freedom, and get to know the science, because that's what they're going to throw at us. They're going to say, oh, well, the science, we're just following the science. We're just going to follow science. Report after report after report tells us that lockdowns don't work, and asymptomatic people do not spread the disease. They're saying we all got to wear masks, and this is what liberals do. If you don't wear a mask, you don't care. Just like with greenhouse, climate change. If you don't ride a bicycle, if you're riding a big SUV, you don't care. Why, again, their elites are flying jet planes and riding big SUVs. This is how these communists work. This is how the left works in this country now. Fear. They get their side fearful of climate change. Now they got them fearful of this virus. That 99.9% of the people survive. And Minnesota Congresswoman, see if I wrote her name down, Minnesota Congresswoman Mary Franson and Congressman Scott Jensen just reported that they believe on their research these numbers are inflated 40 to 60% on COVID deaths. So that would mean the percentage of people dying from COVID is even less than 0.1%. And they gave examples, and they showed coroner reports, people dying in car crashes, but they tested positive for COVID, so it was considered a COVID death. I seen a coroner on the Tucker Carlson show saying, I had 2 men that were killed by gunshot wounds. And before I finished my examination, the hospital had the report out that it was COVID-19 deaths. Because they had COVID-19. But he said they died from the bullet wounds in their chest. These were young men in their 20s. COVID-19 is not going to kill them. So why are they reporting it? Well, because just like we had the same thing with HIV/AIDS. The government was giving extra money to hospitals that reported, if you had HIV deaths. So this is well documented that there was so much fraud, and it was overestimated how many people were dying of AIDS. With COVID, they're getting even more. They're getting more from Medicaid, and then with the CARES Act, if they get like 160 COVID deaths in that hospital, they get a big lump sum of money. A ton of money. We're talking a lot of money. So just follow the money, and you'll find the lies. So the virus is real, but so is the flu. And we don't freaking lock down the whole world and go into a depression because of the flu. There's an alternative motive. It isn't to protect us. It's to control us. And the only thing that was standing in their way was Trump. This is why, at all costs, they had to get Trump out of the way. And it sounds like a conspiracy theory, and I've always rejected. 90% of conspiracy theories that come my way, I just laugh at. I'm just following what I've seen with my own 2 eyes. And the media will tell you, don't believe your eyes. The media will tell you, don't believe your ears. But we're living in 1984. If you didn't see the movie, you need to Google it. I think it's on YouTube. This is 1984. They want to get rid of our past so they can tell us what the future is. So anyway, resist, but know there's hope. In my next in my next video, I'm going to give you, I think, like 3 scenarios that could play out, and they all have happy endings in a kind of way. So don't get down. You know, if this is bringing you down, you know, what the left is doing, how the media lies, and how the left steals, and how they're trying to take away our freedoms, don't let you get you down. God is in control. This is all going to be exposed. Just try and have faith and use this to bring you closer to Jesus. Don't let this get you down psychologically. A lot of people are getting depressed. Don't allow the devil to bring you down. He's attacking your mind. Don't allow it. Just keep praying. Get closer to God. And I'm telling you, my next video, I'm going to give you some hopeful outcomes that I see. And, you know, being alive 55 years on this life and just observing things and watching things unfold and putting 2 and 2 together, I got a little bit of wisdom. And, you know, following the Lord for 35 years, I've seen how the Lord works through politics and works through horrible events. So I'm hopeful. And like I said, my next video, I'm going to give you some hopeful scenarios. Until then, stay Catholic. God bless, and stay a patriot.